I'm in a place where I miss the old horizontal mergers. They seem so easy by comparison to these. Look, we're at advanced stages of negotiations and discussions with the Department of Justice. Now, if I could lay some ground rules with you, what gets discussed in the negotiations with the DOJ is highly confidential. And I think we were both a little disturbed yesterday by leaks and information that came out. And I even came out and made some comments yesterday about the discussions because there were so many rumors and suppositions going around. But I do want to make a couple of really strong points, important points. And that is, first and foremost, irrespective of what you read yesterday, I have never been told that the price of getting the deal done was selling CNN, period. And likewise, I have never offered to sell CNN. And I'll repeat what I said yesterday. There is absolutely no intention that we would ever sell CNN. So take those two off the table. So where are we? We're in where you would expect us to be at this stage of a deal. We're well past a year since this deal was consummated. And for a vertical transaction, I'm surprised we've gone this long. I shouldn't say I'm surprised, but there have been a lot of extenuating circumstances. Mainly, we haven't had a head of the Antitrust Department because of the delays in the confirmation process. And so Macon Delrahim has just been put in the role, and so he's now getting up to speed and engaged in the transaction. And so we did have our first meeting on Monday. I'm not going to tell you what was said in that meeting. They are very privileged conversations. But as you might guess, when you're doing a big negotiation, you spend a lot of time just getting to know each other. I've spent a lot of time trying to get to know Macon in terms of reading and looking at comments he's made in public. And that meeting was getting to know each other. And you spend a lot of time trying to understand what the bid-ask is in a transaction like that. And so I think we had a very productive meeting on Monday. I really do. I think it was productive. I think we both learned a lot about where each other are. And so now we continue this process and see if we can get to a negotiated settlement.
Okay, but just help me with this.
Okay.
First sources come out from the DOJ side in all of this, suggesting that you offered CNN.
I read that too.
You read that too?
Yeah.
Then you came out and said, and just said it again, that that's not true. These are completely different ideas. How could that be?
I think it's a fair question. It's a good question. I can't represent. I don't even know who in the DOJ is saying these things. You know, I get from the press. A source in the DOJ says, "I'll tell you what I said." All right, and what I said inside that meeting. I have never offered to sell CNN. You think about what we're trying to accomplish here, and one of the key benefits of putting these two companies together is to stand up a new advertising capability, and so we have built an amazing distribution platform. 150 million mobile subscribers, the largest pay TV base in the United States, a huge broadband base. There's a lot of information and data that we think can be used to stand up a new advertising business. Pairing that with the Turner advertising inventory is a really powerful thing, we believe. That is what we aspire to do. Selling CNN makes no sense in that context if that's the business you're trying to build. And so to actually suggest that I would be interested in selling CNN it just doesn't make sense in the context of what we're trying to accomplish. Now, I have been called and asked if I would sell CNN by numerous people, not in the Department of Justice, but there have been a lot of people express interest in CNN.
Okay, so let's just ask this then. Did you feel any pressure during that meeting or otherwise to sell CNN from anybody inside the government?
No.
That has not come up?
No.
At all?
No.
What about this idea of selling DirecTV? So
I'm going to repeat what I said in the beginning. What gets discussed inside that room is highly privileged. And I cannot go there. It's so important when you're in these kind of negotiations with justice that they remain confidential, because you can't have open and candid conversations about a negotiated settlement if everything's leaking. And so what happens inside that room needs to stay inside that room.
But I will tell you, even today, we're hearing from sources inside the government that were surprised by your statement yesterday, that you were surprised by their statement.
I'm not even sure I can follow all of that. I will state again, I'm not selling CNN and AT&T is not selling CNN.
Let me ask you this. Why do you want CNN so badly?
Because I need a strong competitor against NBC, man, Andrew, right? Okay. No, I went through it already. I personally think that where we are right now in the world of advertising and media, that there are a couple of players who have built incredibly strong positions and impressive positions in advertising. And they are technology companies. And I believe that if we are going to compete, if somebody is going to compete with them, the best opportunity we have is somebody like AT&T. I honestly do believe that. If somebody's going to stand up a platform that can actually attract advertisers that would compete against a Google or Facebook, somebody with the data that's resident in our distribution business and an inventory, a sizable inventory like you have in Turner, is an entity that could compete in that level. That's what this is about. Now, tell me again, you answer my question, why would I sell CNN if that's the business we're trying to build? Great demographic, great advertising inventory, great content.
Is this a surprise for you in terms of the turn this has taken, given the comments that President Trump made on the campaign trail and the comments that he continues to make about what he calls the fake news at CNN and other news organizations, but he's clearly targeted CNN?
Look, we came into it, and I've been really consistent with this all along, that this is I know everybody's tired of hearing this is a classic vertical merger. There are no overlaps of competition. There are no competitors being taken out of this market. We came into that with that expectation. We came into this recognizing two things. There hasn't been one of these challenged in the courts and defeated in 40 years. We also came into this knowing that 5, 6, 7 years ago, Comcast acquired NBCU, which is probably, from a content standpoint, a more difficult transaction than this one. And that transaction was done with strong behavioral conditions. We came into this with those two pieces of history and the law behind us and felt very comfortable stepping into this transaction. Am I surprised that there are statements that there might be litigation here? Yeah, of course I'm surprised. Am I concerned? It also might not surprise you that since the day we announced this, we've been preparing to litigate this deal. And we have been working very diligently on a litigation strategy and a litigation plan. So we are prepared. If we get to a place, we'll have to ask ourselves, is a negotiated settlement a better or worse outcome than if we litigate? If we feel like litigation is a better outcome, then we will litigate. If we can get a negotiated settlement for time and energy and money, you would obviously go with a negotiated settlement.
Let me ask you about the timing of that, because both companies can walk away from this deal in April if it is not completed.
Right. April 22nd, my birthday.
April 22nd, your birthday. Well, we'll see what your birthday present is then.
I hope it's an early birthday present, yeah.
Just walk us through the timeline. If you were to close and try to force the DOJ to sue you, how it would work?
DOJ would file a lawsuit, obviously. If we're going to go to litigation, our preference would be sooner is better. And we're prepared to litigate now. Like I said, we've been working on this for a year, so we're prepared to litigate now. We would obviously, I'm not a lawyer, but we would obviously ask for an expedited hearing. We feel a transaction of this size, you would likely get an expedited hearing. And so we feel comfortable that this transaction could be litigated, a hearing conducted, and an answer provided well before that April 22nd deadline.
The new head of antitrust enforcement, who reportedly you met with this week, as you just described, had made some comments before he got the job about how he thought that on the merits of the law that the deal would go through. Did that, when you first heard that he was getting the job, did that change your view of what was going to happen, or was there a sigh of relief? You thought, okay, this is happening?
It reinforced what we thought about the transaction. I mean, he made comments that were exactly in line with what we thought about this transaction going in. So, no, it wasn't a surprise. In fact, it was just affirmation that he was basically affirming what justice has been saying for 40 years, right? It's a vertical merger and not provide any kind of antitrust concerns.
When the deal first came out, I remember a number of people took notice of the fact that the breakup fee on the transaction was small, $500 million, and $500 million small relative to the $4 billion breakup fee.
It's been a year, so my memory may be shaky, but I think it's a little more than that, but yeah.
But why so small? Was that an indication to you that you thought perhaps this was going to run into regulatory trouble?
I would suggest to you it's probably an indication that Jeff Bewkes believed that it would not run into regulatory trouble.
Let me just circle back on our earlier conversation, if you'd indulge me for just 1 second, which is...
Do I have a choice?
Help us understand one thing. You said that you didn't want to talk about all of this in the public, and I appreciate that. But what led you, take us inside the room of what led you then to say what you said yesterday? Because clearly, if sources inside the government were saying something, you didn't necessarily have to take it on one way or the other.
Look, it's a big deal to suggest that I walked in there and volunteered to sell a particular really important asset to get the deal done. I mean, these are businesses that they're talent driven. I mean, Andrew Ross Sorkin, you're a major part of the New York Times and CNBC, and to have anybody thinking that we're prepared to dump this asset to get the deal done is harmful. I mean, that's if you're not planning to do it, you need to set the record straight. And there is, it's been over a year, and the people inside Time Warner have been sitting here on pins and needles. We can't speak to them. We can't talk to them about their future in terms of what their work environment, what their work prospects within AT&T are going to be. Everybody is sitting on pins and needles. And then to have somebody come out and say, we're offering up to sell CNBC to get a deal done, it's a painful situation and need to be addressed.
Okay, but let me just ask you one last way, which is this. Is it possible there was a misunderstanding in the following way? You described it and said, look, you get into a meeting like this and there's a bid and an ask, right? Everybody's trying to have a conversation about what could or could not be on the table. I imagine if you're in that room. I don't know, I wasn't there. But I'm trying to understand how you could have such a diametrically opposed view to others that apparently were in that room. And the other question I was going to ask you that relates to it is, has there been any conversation since then about this to try to mend some fences to the extent that you want to?
Has there been, the last part of the question?
Any efforts to mend fences? Meaning, has there been any since all of this happened, before you put out a statement like that yesterday, do you call and say, look, we're hearing this? What can you?
No, I don't call and say that I'm about to say is whatever statement was put out, I'm going to correct. But these kind of negotiations they're professional. They really are professional. I think yesterday was unfortunate. I think it's an indication of what happens with a media business and a media asset. And there is just so much juiciness and sexiness around this and First Amendment concerns and issues and so forth that I believe a lot of people leapt quickly to rumors and suspicion. And a lot of it came out really, really early. And you said, that's kind of weird. Never happened, right? And so I don't know. I'm stepping outside of our tradition and our norm of talking about anything that was said in that room to clarify this. But this one is just patently false.
Okay. Is there any part of you that sees the argument where people say there's too much concentration of power and influence within a particular media entity, and that this transaction will give you that? It will be the first real, truly national platform. You'll recall Comcast, of course, tried to pursue its deal with this company, and the government didn't want to do it.
Fox. With this company?
I'm sorry, with Time Warner.
Oh, okay.
And obviously didn't want that transaction to have Time Warner Cable. I apologize.
Okay.
Time Warner Cable, in part because they didn't want that deal to become a national business.
So anybody who follows this industry, and you being one of the top ones, knows that concentration of power is the least problem in this industry. This is an industry that is going through incredible disruption. You can look at what Netflix is doing and how they're building subscribers, and you can look at what's happening to media in general. Both the distribution side, cable TV and satellite, is being pressured by the disruption that's going on in media. Look at the media and content side. They are being pressured. And everybody's reimagining and rethinking their business models. Disney aggressively going direct to consumer and thinking differently about how they distribute their content. We will have to rethink also how we consider distributing content in a new world. So the idea that somehow we're going to take distribution and content and create something that's so powerful that we've disrupted Google and Amazon and Facebook and Netflix, it borders on comical, to be quite honest with you. What we're trying to do is build a platform that gives us an opportunity to compete with those guys. And I just think these folks, Amazon, Google, Facebook, have created some amazing franchises. What we're doing here is building something that we hope will give us a shot at competing with them.
Two questions related to two deals that have been in the news, and I'm curious what your reaction was when you heard them. One being T-Mobile and Sprint. Been long rumored, there have been talks for a very long time. Those ended last week.
Yeah.
Did you think that deal should have happened? Would that have been good for your business?
I used to think, but now that the talks are over, I'll be very candid with you. I used to think the idea that I hoped it would happen would probably be the reason it could never happen, right? It's a deal that obviously we tried to do a similar deal a few years ago, and I'd be disingenuous if I thought it was a deal that didn't make sense. I think it makes a lot of sense. The problem with that deal, I always believed, was the rationale by which the DOJ challenged our deal, and that it was you're going from 4 national competitors to 3. They just had that hurdle to overcome. So I thought it was going to be a difficult run for them. But did it make sense for them? Yeah, I thought it made a lot of sense for both of them.
Thus far, neither of them have been quite public at all about your deal, meaning either being in support of it or not.
Right.
Given that they're now independent and going independent, at least for a while, do you see them getting involved in this whole debate that you're now in?
They may as well jump in. Everybody else is, right? Yeah.
And what was your take when you heard this news about Disney in negotiations with Fox?
It didn't seem irrational to me. Didn't seem illogical to me. I suspect a lot of people in the industry are just on pause watching to see what happens with our deal. I think it would be very difficult for somebody to take a move right now without understanding how the DOJ is now processing M&A and consolidation in this sector.
If the deal doesn't happen, if somehow you go to court and lose, what happens to the company?
What happens to the company?
What are the implications?
Look, I'm so excited about this deal that I don't even like to go to what happens if you don't get it done. I'm also optimistic enough that I don't spend a lot of intellectual and mental cycles thinking about what happens if it doesn't get done. If it doesn't get done, we're left with the business we have today, which is a pretty darn good business. It's a business that last quarter generated $11 billion of cash flow, in a single quarter. And, I think we are going to want to figure out another avenue, if something were to happen, on how we accomplish the same thing. But from an antitrust perspective, again, it just is illogical for me to think this deal doesn't get approved.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.